So here we go with another unedited video on my 3-in-1 Atlas / Brinkman mill and lathe combo. It's called a Brinkman because the chip tray is made out of the barbecue cover. There's my best shot at a A-bomb 79 chip, although it's aluminum. You don't want to get it too heavy. Here's a new control panel. Turn the power on. There's a Cloud 42 electronic lead screw. It will let you select feed rates based on spindle or RPM. It'll also let you select threads per inch, and you can switch back and forth from millimeter to imperial. So if I go to millimeter and I turn on the lathe, my lead screw is now going to give me half a millimeter per revolution. I still operate the lead screw the way you would normally do it. There's the DRO showing that. It has a reverse function, but I don't know that I'll ever use that. This next item is a pulse generator. Days Cars came up with that idea, not exactly this panel. So if I switch over to it, I needed to gang two switches together to end up with 18 pins on 6 poles, because these are kind of wired backwards on which to each other, on which pins are common, either ground or power in the stepper motor controller. So this switch sends power either to the mill or the lathe, and the center is off. These are the controls for the speed for the treadmill motors. This should have been 100 kilo ohms, but it's only 80. So when you flip it on, it goes at 230 RPM, and I'm in the third fastest speed range. The old speed ranges went with low gear on the counter pulley from 25 on the deep reduction up to 650, depending on which pulley you chose. Now, because of this, in Bullo I get 13 to 75, and then I change those pulley sizes. The range goes from 300 to 1930 RPM, which is quite a bit. So the good news about operating this thing, if I turn this off, I can turn this power off. Now when I turn it back on, the RPM still shows up for the spindle, if I decide to use this for that. But I intended to use it for the mill, so when I switch to mill, I have my RPM gauge up there, which I finally got working. Don't ask me how. That's so I don't bash my head. Anyway, I have, this was the old RPM range when I was just using the pulleys with the old treadmill controller. Now I have much higher range. So I'm at 1060 there, but I still can overdrive whatever I want to go faster or end up with more torque, because they are treadmill motors. I don't know whether I mentioned my forward reverse switch. I'm allowed to turn it off, but I have to move this out of the way to get reverse, because I don't need that spindle spinning across the room. It's threaded on. So all the gears are gone out of here except for this one, and I put a pulley on that overdrives the encoder by 2 to 1, so it's basically 2880 pulses per revolution. Very accurate positioning with the spindle. And then this NEMA 34 runs this 2-to-1, so I have all kinds of torque if I need it. I actually used 2 hands to stall it, and it did kick out, which is probably better than crashing into something and breaking gears. Did that once in there, and it's hard to find parts like that. So in the back, this used to be the fan and flywheel for the motor of the treadmill, and it shook like crazy even in the treadmill because it was machined off center. So I rebored the center using the outside that I had cut down, and then I machined grooves in it. I machined away all the fins and made it thinner because I really don't need a flywheel here. This adapter, just 1-inch thick tube, uses the same Atlas mounting for the motor. I had to make this pulley then because I stole the other one, and I just pressed a hub into a piece of plate and then riveted these fins on. It works good. Of course, the motor's longer. I had to move this over. So the good news about this paint is you can grind it off and give it a quick squirt, and it comes back. You don't see overspray. This motor has not changed up here, except that it's drawn fresh air in here instead of from the front. It used to go across the panel. That was the Treadmill controller. This is my book. All of my documentation and settings are listed there for when I forget. So with this down here, you can set how many, they call it revolutions, but it's revolutions there, I believe, and it's not even accurate. Probably something to do with the stepper controller, but all I did was measure it at different settings, and then I made up this chart. So I can actually, don't know why that won't focus. Anyway, I can get to 15 inches per minute of travel from basically 150 thou per minute on with a number 5 displayed. Down here, well, there's the power supply. Maybe I'll turn it off this time. So there is the power supply for the stepper controller. This is an SCR that runs both treadmill motors. I just switched from one to the other. It's got a choke down there that Days Cars will tell you how to do. Then I got 2 rectifiers wired in parallel, so they could only ever see 7.5 amps each, even though they're good for 50. Just safety, because Day from Days Cars says these aren't necessarily reliable, but I already had them. This transformer came out of a microwave. I cut it open, took out the high voltage coil, then I left 20 thou after I cut the plates. You have to clamp the plates, because when you try to cut them, they start spreading open, and then I don't think you can get them back once you make a burr. I caught it in time, and then once I put it back together, I welded it again. So that's a pretty heavy switch made in Germany. There's a heat sink that came off one of the treadmills I scrapped, and so it'll keep everything back there cold. I have a bunch of resistors down there to make electronic brake, or electric brake, whatever you want to call it, but I have not connected up because I'm afraid my spindle is going to come flying off. These 2 little transformers, one of them runs the cooling fan, and the other one runs Cloud 42's ELS. So if you go to Cloud 42, you'll see how he developed the machine. If you go to Days Cars, he's got parts lists, like Cloud 42 has many videos as he was developing it, and it's hard to keep up with all of them and find them all, but I did. If you go to Dave's Cars, he stuck one of these on his little lathe, and he has a parts list and all the descriptions of what it does, a lot better than what I've just done. There's my collets. They were there before, but I forgot to show them. This is my new spit shield. So I don't drool on my parts I'm trying to make. That light actually is pretty handy. This light is pretty handy to have around. Lights up my spindle. Then I put all my junk here that I used to have in a tray that collected chips better than anything. So now I can't collect as many. But these are the tools that I most likely use on a regular basis. Tapping things into place. Chuck key, so I don't leave it in the chuck like you're not supposed to. Tape measure, wrench for the tool post. My tool post is over here at the moment. Here's my device. These are the parts that came off. This thing shook like crazy when you ran it in on the higher speed. These are all the gears I have. I could go 16 threads per inch, which was what I used to make this nut up here on my milling machine, and the threads on the spindle that I made out of a truck drive shaft. And I was about to buy or try to make a bunch more gears until I saw the electronic lead screw and decided to go that route. This is the old cover plate, which has been replaced with this mounting. Actually does a better job keeping chips out back there. And when I mentioned a belt grinder, there's a guy named Francisco Manchiro or something like that. He came up with this idea. Instead of trying to cut a slot and filing for the rest of my natural life, you loosen this and it releases the clamp, and then when you tighten it, because if you haven't drilled the hole exactly straight, when you try to tighten it with the other slot, it tries to move it on you. Well, this just clamps it in place. And of course I did the same thing under there for the table adjustment. It's a very simple way to do it. This is something you don't see on, at least I haven't seen yet on a belt grinder. Goes over center. Now I use two hands. I don't have a spring, I don't need to hold it and use one. This is for a cabinet door that raises, it doesn't swing out, it raises up. So that's been very helpful. This whole thing will tip sideways if I want, and then this light makes my poor eyesight get better. Anyway, that's pretty well it. Thanks for watching. Bye.